Imagine fighting for days through rain, mud, snow, and enemy fire, carrying nearly 70 pounds of equipment, burning thousands of calories every day, and then discovering your next meal is nothing more than a few crackers, a can of meat, and a piece of chocolate. During World War II, food wasn't a luxury. It wasn't comfort. For millions of soldiers, food meant survival. This is the brutal reality of what soldiers ate during World War II. Every soldier knew one simple rule: never leave food behind. Long before reaching the battlefield, soldiers packed emergency rations into their gear. These rations had to survive rain, mud, freezing temperatures, and rough transport across entire continents. Everything was designed for one purpose: keeping soldiers alive when fresh food wasn't available. As armies marched across Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific, these small food supplies became as important as ammunition. One of the most famous wartime meals was the K ration. Small enough to fit inside a soldier's pack, simple enough to carry anywhere. Inside were crackers, canned meat, coffee powder, sugar, chewing gum, and chocolate. It wasn't a feast. Most soldiers complained about eating the same foods day after day. But military planners weren't trying to create restaurant-quality meals. They were trying to create food that could survive war, and it worked. Millions of K rations were distributed throughout the conflict. A typical morning wasn't eggs and bacon. Most soldiers woke before sunrise. The air was cold. The ground was wet. Enemy attacks could happen at any moment. Breakfast often consisted of hard crackers, canned meat, and instant coffee. Many soldiers heated water whenever possible. Others simply ate cold food because there wasn't enough time. The goal wasn't enjoyment. The goal was getting enough energy to keep moving. Unlike civilians, soldiers couldn't stop for a proper lunch break. Combat operations continued throughout the day. Marches lasted for miles. Many soldiers ate while walking. A handful of crackers, a piece of chocolate, a few bites of canned meat. Food was often consumed whenever there was a moment of safety. Sometimes that moment lasted only a few minutes. Then it was back to marching, back to fighting, back to surviving. One of the most important foods carried by soldiers was chocolate. But this wasn't ordinary chocolate. Military chocolate bars were specifically designed for emergencies. In fact, some versions were intentionally made difficult to eat. Military planners didn't want hungry soldiers consuming the entire bar at once. The chocolate had to provide energy over a longer period. It was dense, it was durable, and during desperate situations, it could mean the difference between continuing forward and collapsing from exhaustion. Canned meat became one of the defining foods of World War II. Fresh meat spoiled quickly. Canned meat could travel across oceans. It could survive months of transport. It could feed armies. Products like canned beef, pork, and Spam became incredibly common. Soldiers ate them in Europe. They ate them in the Pacific. They ate them almost everywhere. Many grew tired of the taste, but they kept eating because there were few alternatives. Winter created an entirely new challenge. Food could freeze solid. Water became difficult to find. Cooking became dangerous. A small fire could reveal a position to the enemy. Some soldiers spent hours trying to warm frozen rations. Others ate food cold because they had no choice. In freezing temperatures, every calorie mattered. The human body burned enormous amounts of energy simply trying to stay warm, and hunger became an enemy of its own. Nothing boosted morale like a hot meal. Whenever possible, military field kitchens followed advancing troops. Army cooks worked under difficult conditions: rain, mud, snow, enemy attacks. Yet somehow they managed to prepare hot food. Stew became one of the most common meals. A bowl filled with meat, vegetables, and broth could completely change a soldier's day. For many troops, those meals became some of their strongest memories from the war. If we placed everything on one table, a typical day might include crackers, canned meat, chocolate, coffee, sugar, chewing gum, and if conditions allowed, a hot meal from a field kitchen. It doesn't sound impressive, but together these foods provided the calories necessary to march, fight, carry equipment, and survive extreme conditions. Every item had a purpose. Every calorie counted. Even the best supply systems sometimes failed. Roads were destroyed. Ships were sunk. Weather delayed deliveries. During major campaigns, soldiers occasionally found themselves with far less food than they needed. Rations were reduced. Meals became smaller. Hunger became a daily reality. Exhausted troops continued marching despite empty stomachs. Because on the battlefield, stopping wasn't an option. You moved forward, no matter how hungry you were. When people think about World War II, they usually remember the tanks, the aircraft, the battles, the generals. But behind every victory stood something much simpler. Food. Because armies cannot fight without fuel, and soldiers cannot survive without nourishment. From cold crackers and muddy foxholes to steaming bowls of stew near the front lines, every meal played a role in one of history's largest conflicts. For millions of soldiers, food wasn't just something they ate. It was the thing that kept them alive long enough to see another sunrise. And sometimes that was enough.